And what I'm using for this build is actually a fleet I'm going to be using later today for a Star Wars Armada tournament in Orlando. I'm going to try uploading that video once I shoot it, hopefully tomorrow, because I get back real late. Usually they end around 7, 8 p.m., and I have an hour drive all the way back to the east side of the coast. So right now I'm going to show you just the mindset and the brainstorm that I have behind me of how to build a fleet. So number one, what you do is you come up with your flagship. Whatever ship, I guess, that you would use. This is the only time that you get to have the free will of picking what you really want from scratch. For instance, I chose the ISD Simoon refit, which I'm going to be using this ship right here, and he's going to be running Vader. Now those two I got to pick, and now I got to figure out everything else to complement my fleet based on my choice prior. So right now, an ISD has to have either a support fleet or an escort fleet. You could do a little bit of both too. I chose to go with more of an escort fleet. With the ISD Simoon refit, I chose 2 Raiders as its escort. Now the reason behind Raiders, of course you know if you've watched anything from my channel, I love Raiders. Also, they're really good on 1v1. They're gonna die really quick, but they can pack a punch. And as an escort, you're supposed to be taking fire, and you can dish out some as well. That's very important when you're looking for an escort. Also, you need something, whether it's a flank or a multi-purpose role ship. And the idea behind it is that one is to complete whatever your objective is in the game, and also to hold a flank so nobody can bum rush you from behind. So for that option, I chose the Architon. That's one of the best ships in the game when you want to look at flanking. It's absolutely astonishing with its maneuverability and with its firing. When you run enhanced armament and concentrate fire, you get to roll 5 dice out of the sides. And they're all red, which is really epic. And the reason why I chose all these guys together is because Vader complements each one very well. If you're going to run a Raider, you typically want to run Admiral Screed, but Vader is a close second. The reason being is because with 2 evades, you can spend an evade to reroll all your blues and blacks, plus you have Ordnance Experts, which you get to reroll those blacks as well. So you get to roll your black dice essentially 3 times if needed. I put external racks on them, so I'll be able to roll extra 2 dice, plus Concentrate Fire, plus my 2 black dice and 2 blue dice from beginning. I could roll 7 dice upon my first attack on somebody. The Architons, same thing. Architons, you typically want to run Vader, or you would have some dice mitigation. I put Enhanced Armament on him. Of course, Vader's complementing him well. I put Reinforced Blast Doors, and I put Damage Control Officer on him as well, because he's probably going to be a little bit off to the side by himself, taking fire, so nobody can break through my flank. So now the next part is when you want to look at upgrades, you want to figure out what upgrade can complement the entire fleet. For an instance, on the ISD, I really want to go first, and I have 4 ships. I definitely want to use Strategic Advisor for the first 2 to 3 rounds of the game. And that's going to complement my whole fleet. I'm going to use Intensify Firepower as my fleet card. Pretty much that's really good with all my red dice. You know, there's probably going to be some blanks, even though I get to roll with Vader. I'm also going to be using people like Agent Callus or Impetuous on my Raiders that are really going to complement each other, because neither one is going to be more powerful against squadrons than the other one at the same time. So those are things you want to think about as you're building your fleet. Also, for my ISD, I'm running Sovereign. Sovereign's going to really help change my, not my dials, but my command tokens on the supporting fleet around me, range 1 through 5. I plan on keeping everything within range 1 through 5. And honestly, that's really probably the best option, because the 2 command dials that you're going to be running between is going to be Nav and Concentrate Fire. Typically, what I would do for the beginning of the game is I would run Nav, and then towards the end of the game, I would run Concentrate Fire. Now, you can always switch this up with the Sovereign title. You could also give yourself Engineer out of it, or Squadron. I'm going Squadron-less, so I don't even need to worry about squads. But that's the mentality and thinking behind it. You want to find upgrades that support the entire fleet overall. Next, you want to find out before you can look at your strategy and how well these ships fly with each other, you gotta decide, are you gonna be first player or second player? I'm going with first player, which I'm going for the bid of I believe it's 370, no, I'm sorry, I want to say it's 372. I'm going to check when I get to the tournament and recount everything, but I'm confident that my list is 372, which is really good, especially for 4 ships, including Empire. That's really big. And the best way you can look at, if you're a mathematician, you want to crunch the numbers on what's your percentage of being winning the bid. What you could do is you take whatever you have. So you have your 372 minus your minus 400, and you're going to get that sum of whatever the last 100 is. What you're going to do out of that is you're going to compare that to the 30 rule. And the 30 rule is typically your lowest bid you'll ever encounter in an actual tournament, like, big, whether it's Gen Con or in a store tournament, is around 370 points. That's the lowest. I mean, there are some people who go lower, but that's generally the cutoff point. And so you go from 30, so if you're at 499, you're going to put yourself at 1 point, and you have 1 out of 30 people of actually winning that spot in a bid. Typically around my area, most people just go to 400. So I don't even worry about dropping my points under 390 unless I just like to, because I don't like to give my opponent extra stuff to shoot at and upgrades that don't affect me well. So right now I'm running. So with 372, that gives me an advantage of almost 28 out of 30 that I'm going to be winning the bid out of. So with that in mind, I can look at and say, okay, how am I going to fly? I'm going to be first player. I have strategic advisor. Now I want to figure out how my fleet is going to incorporate with each other. And on the board here, there are some diagrams and some charts and some graphs of how my ships can interact with each other when they're flying. The different yaws they get, their speed they can have, and how they can maneuver if somebody tries to flank. And the idea here also that I really love to do, and you don't have to do it, is I love coming up with flaws in my fleet and how I fly. The reason being is because I can be aware of those flaws, and I can watch as somebody is actually making use of that, and I can sort of counter in a way. I could sort of put, for an instance, if I want to hug the side of the board to the left, and I'm running my escorts up front with my ISD, I could have my Architect who's hiding in the back a little bit with a nav token, and jump to the other side of my ISD if I leave a pocket that's too open for somebody to get into. No, ideally, I do want that scenario to happen. So you try to create fake, almost false alarms. You want to create fake instances where you're weak or where you might have not thought of something, or it leaves you vulnerable when in reality you've got that spot covered really well. Another thing you want to look at is you just want to look at another aspect is, of course, squadrons. Now, I don't have squadrons up on the board right now because I'm not using squadrons, and I really don't like using squadrons. But with that aspect, you want to sort of look at how they complement your fleet as well. Are you a carrying fleet? Are you offensive, defensive? And more than that, you want to work on how your squadrons interact with each other. Of course, that's easier said than done. But generally, I hope you could see that you can start taking one element and seeing how it flows through the rest of the fleet. Because that's really important. Especially when you get more competitively. Because although I would love to run, 3 ISDs, or I would love to run an ISD, a Demolisher, an Architon, and a Raider, I probably could do that when you want to look at a 400 point fleet turbine. But that's not competitive. They don't mesh well with each other. Demolisher does not mesh well with an ISD platform. As much as I've tried and as much as I love it, it really doesn't mesh well. Just like with Raiders and some other things. I love running 6 Raiders. It's not competitive. I mean, it is if you're running against heavy squadron balls, but ordinarily it's not competitive. You have to find things that mesh with each other, give each other fire, like the combos. You're wanting your raiders to escort your ISD's providing cover fire for your raiders to get closer. You're also covering your flanks with the Architid. Um, and that's the overall general strategy that I have with this list, is to sort of keep everything closer together, but loosely close, within the 1 to 5 range, so I can activate my ISD's abilities for the whole fleet, and everything like that. So later today or tomorrow, I'll post the video of how the tournament went, and we'll see how effective my brainstorming at 2 o'clock in the morning really is.